Hello everyone, this is Jacob Popio, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, Jan and RJ interview Miss Vanessa Oswalt. Vanessa wrestled for the women's national team as well as the Army World Class Athlete Program. She is currently a huge advocate in the process of sanctioning girls wrestling as a sport in the state of Ohio. Make sure to check out the show notes to find out how you can support the movement. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, Apex Chasers, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jan Almasy, and seated across the table from me, as always, is my partner in crime, Mr. RJ Holiday.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Glad
Not
to
like
be
I
back.
haven't done that 100 times.
Yeah,
at
I
this
know,
point.
but you paused like it was someone different for a second.
Well, because the last episode we recorded, I was with Popio, so
I
I'm
know.
like,
You took my seat.
yeah,
Mhm.
you got voted off the island
I
for an
remember.
episode. Are you going to hold that against us?
No, it was his. It was his baby. He had
It
all
was. That was
rights
a good-
to that.
That was a really good interview.
I know nothing about horses.
That's fair. All right, guys. So a couple of announcements today. We're going to kind of change up. As you listened in the pre-reel, first off, I'd like to thank you guys for donating into the Patreon. We're
Yes.
starting to see more donors.
Big time. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, that is awesome. That helps us buy microphones. It helps us travel. It helps us bring you guys good content. So if you guys want to go there, as you've heard in the pre-reel and the post-reels, it's www.patreon.com/The Apex Podcast. All you have to do is click on Become a Patron, and you can donate as little as $1 a month. You can link a credit card, debit card, or bank account to it, and it'll just auto-draft it every month. If you don't want to do that, you can also do one-time donations through Venmo. It's just the venmo.com/The Apex Podcast. And then, unfortunately, you don't have access to the same benefits that the Patreon people will have access to, but we also really appreciate those one-time
You're
donors.
still helping us out regardless.
Right, and you'll still get a tweet from either me or RJ.
Both
So-
of us.
Both of us?
Yeah, both us.
Both of us. All right, that sounds good. I'll keep an eye out for all of that. So today, I'm going to open up this episode with a reading from my ever so handy and trusty Discipline Equals Freedom field manual. For those of you that know me personally, you know that I'm a huge fan of Mr. Jocko Willink and his Discipline Equals Freedom style. So with that, we'll open this up with this reading. So this one's titled Begin. And if you have the Discipline Equals Freedom field manual, it's on page 84. And here we go. This is where it begins. In the darkness. Before the sun and the birds and the world rise. Every day, when the alarm sounds, it is time. Rise, despite fatigue and soreness. Curse the warmth of the bed. Curse the comfort of the pillows and fight the temptation of weakness. Get up and go. Do it quickly, without thought. Do not reason with weakness. You cannot. You must only take action. Get up and go. So another quick disclaimer, we are going to be interviewing somebody today that is a member of the United States Armed Forces. If we do dive into any military concepts on this podcast, they are the express opinions of myself and our guest and RJ. They are not the official stances of the United States Air Force, the Air National Guard, or the Department of Defense as a whole. Okay, now that I got that out of the way.
I have a really nice body pillow that is very hard to get out of bed. Just in reference to your
Oh, we're
reading.
going back to the
Yeah,
reading here?
I have a very nice body pillow that is very hard to fight.
Well, that's why you got to do it quickly without thought. You just got to get out of bed and get
I
moving.
don't do anything quickly.
All right. So, with that, as we've talked about this in previous episodes, me and RJ are very passionate about the sport of wrestling.
Wrestling.
Both of us have wrestled since we were wee lads. I started wrestling in like second or third grade. RJ wrestled in, since
grade.
he was second grade.
Yep.
All the way through. Local high schools, they weren't that far apart from each other. And so today, we have the privilege of having somebody on the show that really empowers people to chase the dreams of wrestling, especially when it comes to being a female in the sport, which is not always the easiest thing to overcome, especially when the state you live in doesn't necessarily support it 100% as it stands currently. So with that, welcome Vanessa.
Well, thank you. I do apologize in advance for my raspy voice.
But it's because you're an enthusiastic coach.
Yes, I was coaching all weekend and the weekend before, and it's wrestling season, so.
I have no excuse. It was just St. Patty's Day.
That's fair. I'm drinking coffee right now since it's St. Patty's Day. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Mount Vernon, Ohio, and I grew up wrestling with the youth program down there. Started wrestling when I was 7 years old with the boys, and went through middle school and high school wrestling with the boys. When I was in 5th grade, we started a girls club, and so I did the boys team and then wrestled in the girls club going through school. And then once I graduated, I moved out to Colorado and trained at the Olympic Training Center. And then I joined the Army and wrestled for the Army World Class Athlete Program. Once I was done wrestling, I lived out in Colorado for a couple of years, took a break, and moved back to Ohio and joined the Air National Guard here in Ohio. And then I've been coaching the boys high school team.
Nice. Now, your entire family is very military oriented, right?
Correct. My mom just retired a year and a half ago. She was in for 38 years.
Phenomenal lady. I remember her very well.
I love my mama O. And my sister, she is currently still serving. She's been in for about 13 years as well with the Air National Guard.
That is actually the first Oswalt that I ever met was Bree.
Oh, Bree.
Very, very energetic human.
Mm-hmm.
She is like like if you took a squirrel and compacted it into a person and then put like a crazy amount of work ethic.
Compacted a squirrel?
Like took a
Why would you Why would you be? I was like,
you,
and then,
you take a squirrel and expand it into a person. Is that better? Does that make more sense?
A man-sized squirrel. You're telling me she is. That's
personality.
With,
not getting
with hair that sticks out from her head.
I'm not kidding. Foot. I mean, that's
a comic book character.
Yeah.
Squirrel Girl. Is that what you're telling me right now?
Essentially. No. So if you take like the squirrel's energy, if you take a squirrel's energy and then combine it with like military work ethic and stuff, that's Bree in a nutshell.
Okay. I mean, get that now.
Yeah, she is like
glad we could clear.
I wish like there were days that I would come on.
Like nothing happened.
Right. So I used to work out on that base full time, right? And every time I was out there full time, I would come in and there would be days that I was just drained, no energy, right? And I come in and Bree's like bouncing up and down, running around, giving everybody hugs, high fives. You know, she's like, "We're going to have a great day." And I was like, "Oh my God, like, can I just hook jumper cables up to you real quick? Because this coffee's not cutting it." But like motivated day in and day out, regardless of what she had going on or any other stuff, 110% effort was given to the job, no matter what. And that's something that I always really respected about her, because it was no matter what, like adversities that were happening or anything personal that was going on, because me and her had conversations, you know, at the lunch table or whatever, always 110%. What's the mission? What's the mission? We have to get this done to take care of other people. And like, that's something that permeates throughout your entire family, I think, is just taking care of other people and advocating for other people and making sure that they are covered. And whether you're sacrificing personal time or whatever else, that's something that I've always really taken and tried to aspire to in my military career.
Thank you.
From that family.
And that comes from my mom and my dad. My dad will give 110% to anyone that is asking for help. And he's just, him and my mom are just the most loving and helpful people that you'll come across, and everyone that I've met and that I didn't know when I was younger, but I've now met as an adult, they just rant and rave about my parents. And so that's where, you know, my whole family, my brother's a youth minister, you know, Bree is in the military. So that's where we get that from, is from our parents.
Right. So why don't you, we could talk about a little bit, I want to dive into like what it was like wrestling growing up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I think that's, I know it impacted me.
We know
crazy.
how it was wrestling for us, but we don't. I mean, like we had
everybody has those different experiences,
pre-recording conversation. But like I told you, I can count on one hand how many female wrestlers I saw. You know, from second grade till my senior year of high school, and the more I thought about it, thinking back to individual tournaments where I remember, I'm pretty sure they were the same girl. So there might be less than what I actually was thinking in the first place. So yeah, to definitely go. So if you started when you were 7, what grade was that?
I think it was second grade. So I'll start off with, I think my parents wanted a boy from me.
Yeah.
Because not only did they had me in football, and then they threw me into wrestling because I didn't like football, and wrestling just kind of stuck. And so when I was in second grade, my brother, he had wrestled, and I think it was just easier to take us to the same practice, and that's kind of how I got into wrestling. I was kind of stocky, and I wasn't girly, real girly.
Fair enough.
Kind of tomboy. So it was just an easier transition to go into wrestling. And so my brother was 4 years older than me, and he was wrestling. And so I just dived in. And
Did you have an interest in it, or was it kind of like you had no choice and then like they threw you in there?
I kind of feel like they threw me in there. I'm like, why do I want to do this?
Well, see, I remember specifically for me, we would have like at the end of the school day like meetings where like clubs would like pass out flyers and stuff. And I remember the wrestling team, they were there talking about it and they handed out flyers and I took it home. My dad was extremely upset because he played basketball all the way through high school. He's like, I didn't even get a chance to convince him. He's already brought a pamphlet home and said he wants to wrestle.
Well, basketball is what boys play during men's wrestling season anyway.
Ooh.
Wow.
Shots fired.
No. But yeah, I tried basketball for one season and my dad was like, you can go back to wrestling, son. I understand.
I had no basketball coordination, so I knew I wasn't going to be a basketball
I think
player.
so. If that's the consistent story, then we all fell into wrestling because like my dad wanted me to play baseball
during the winter.
Correct.
My dad was like I tried to play baseball or something else. I ended up playing tennis, which requires hand-eye coordination, but my left eye is like 2200. Right, my right eye's 20/20. So as a kid, my dad would like try to play catch with me, and the ball would just hit me in the face because I had no depth perception. So wrestling was like I was homeschooled, and so my uncle was actually a coach, and it was kind of like my last resort. Where my dad was like, "You're going to be athletic." In wrestling,
one way or
you can
another.
just hold their hands. You don't have to have a whole lot of. You have to have body movement, but not a whole lot of hand-eye coordination right off the bat. So he's like, "We're going to put you on a mat. You're not going to get hit in the face with a ball. You're not going to embarrass me. We're going to put you on a mat where you can succeed." And so I just kind of fell into it because I sucked at pretty much everything else.
At least in your case, you liked it. It wasn't like there's so many kids I remember parents were like, "Hey, you're going to wrestle." I mean, I think pretty sure in high school a kid was court ordered to wrestle because he got in trouble. So instead of going to juvie, they're like, "You have to do a whole season of wrestling." I'm like, "What kind of sport am I in?" Right? Instead of juvie, they're like, "You have to do wrestling." I'm like, "Huh?" I was like,
I'm doing this by
Am I
choice?
being punished?
Am I punishing myself?
Oh. But yeah, so I mean, I enjoyed it once I started wrestling, and a lot of my friends were wrestlers, and so right away it was a brotherhood I was joined, and those guys I grew up wrestling with, and so it was just a brotherhood with that organization. We were called the Little Stingers, and our coach was pretty awesome. Mike Leibarger, he took on the program for quite some time, but it was good. And then going to different tournaments, that was a different story where it was hard because parents would just sit there and they would tell, like myself and my parents, that girls don't belong, or why would you allow your child to wrestle boys? And it wasn't always the greatest. And then boys are
mean.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a
young
tough
boys
sport.
and high school boys are.
It's a
don't have a
tough
whole lot of
sport
vision.
in general, and so a lot of the tournaments we would go to are these, country, out in the middle of nowhere tournaments, and they're very
Stuck
one
in there.
One way
Yes.
by the
They're
books.
very
And this,
stuck
is,
in
this
their
is how
ways,
it is.
yeah.
This is how it stays.
Yes,
This is how
and
we've
so-
always done it. This is how it's going to continue to be.
And so that was very tough. But one thing, when I was growing up, there was a girl my brother had to wrestle, and she was from Northmore, and her name was Jessie Shirley. And that was my she is my inspiration. She was my hero growing up. She was 4 years older than me. And she was just a tough bulldog, and she wrestled a lighter weight class, but that's who I looked up to. And I was so thankful to have a female that I could look up to and aspire to be like. Because I felt like she kind of paved the way for me, because we ended up going to.
You were at the same tournaments. Yeah.
Yes. And so she took on that brunt, and then I was coming up later on. And so
You didn't get it full force.
I would say I still got it full force. It was just from a different generation,
yeah.
kind of not generation, but couple years down the road.
Yeah.
But she was definitely someone who I looked up to, and it was awesome to have her.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever like talk to her now? Or?
So it's pretty cool because I didn't know her kids were wrestling. She has 5 kids now, and she's still in the Northmore area. And I went to a tournament, and lo and behold, her daughter's out there wrestling.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So even this weekend, I saw her, and one of her daughters was out there wrestling. She has, I think, 4 daughters and a son, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2 of her daughters are wrestling, and her son is wrestling. And I was able to walk up to her little daughter, and I was like,
It's come full circle.
yeah, I go, guess what? I was like, I used to watch your mommy wrestle. I was like, she was my hero back in the day. And she just looks at me, and she's like, who is that, Mom?
That's so cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I was so curious about. I like you have these childhood inspirations or these heroes that you have growing up, and how important they can be as far as giving you not even necessarily like internal motivation, but a vision of what you could potentially be capable of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you push yourself, and that's why people have posters of Muhammad Ali on their wall. They have these posters of, you know, people that they aspire to be like. You just have to create that own version of yourself.
I've never like looked at myself as being someone's inspiration. And when
No one ever does. That's
Yes.
the thing.
And
if you do, there's probably a problem.
Yes. And when it like hits you in the face, a couple years ago, this girl, she was the first girl to qualify for the boys state tournament here in Ohio, and her name is Paige Nimick. And I remember watching her when I was going through school, and she was itty bitty. Excuse me. And she had told me, we were at a wrestling camp, and she had told me that when she was younger, we had gotten a picture together, and I signed it for her, and she had it on her wall. Like framed up. She's like, I still have it on my wall.
That's so cool.
And I'm like, oh, that melts my heart, you know?
You're breaking me.
Yeah. And then a couple months ago, I was helping coach at a tournament for girls, and one of the parents took a picture of me just talking to one of the girls.
Mm-hmm.
And later that night, he sent me a picture, and the little girl made it her background of her phone of me just talking to her. I was like, the impact that, you know, you make on somebody, you don't realize it.
No, it's absolutely not. I
And
mean,
that definitely brought it to light. I was like, oh man, I really need
you
to be.
have no idea. Like every word when you're interacting with people like that, or
Especially
that people
kids.
can hold on to.
Yes.
Especially
kids.
very impressionable,
Mm.
and they'll take one thing you say and hang on to it for the longest time.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, there are some people who. I mean, I will say most people don't realize that, especially who it takes a special person to kind of know that instantly, unless you've been working with kids for a while. But like to what you said, you don't know until it comes full circle like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's really, especially in wrestling, until someone comes up to you and says that kind of stuff. I mean, we're not the most glorified sport of all time, considering the fact that they wanted to kick it out of the Olympics in the first place.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like we don't get massive, news articles all the time, unless it's within the community.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get to see that praise all the time. But especially in your case, being such a small demographic, I wouldn't be surprised that every little female wrestler has looked up to you at some point. But you don't go through every day thinking like, I have all these little girls that are looking up to me right now. And I mean, it becomes very heartwarming. Yeah.
It makes me nervous.
Yeah.
It makes my like heartbeat. It makes my heart like melt. I'm like, oh gosh, like all these little girls, and doing some of the clinics that I've done, these little girls just come running up and hugging me, and I'm like, this is overwhelming. I don't know what to do.
Well, and the big thing too, that people have difficulty giving themselves permission to dream. You know what I mean? And I was just talking to a kid the other day that wants to start his own podcast. And he was talking to me about what kind of content he wants. And we're kind of starting to dive into this consulting realm of, if you want to start your own show, here's how, where I kind of started, here's what I would recommend as far as moving on and everything. And I'm talking to him, and he has all of these ideas. And he was telling me, he was like, amazed that I was willing to spend 45 minutes on the phone with him. He was like, I know you're busy, you got stuff to do. And I was like, no, man. I was like, this is awesome. I was like, I'm super happy that you're like willing to try to do this and you wanted to reach out and everything. He was like, watching you start like the Apex and building this show and stuff like that. He was like, is like making me feel like I could do it, you know? And it's in the realm of media, whether it's the realm of wrestling or it's boxing or it's somebody in business, you know, like a female that breaks through the glass ceiling and is now like, I know that we just military side, we have like a new head of surgery in the Army in the medical field. She's like a 4-star that just got promoted up. And it's like the first female 4-star to be head of medical regiments. And so somebody that busts through that barrier, you know, other people are like, I have permission to dream and that I could make it there at some point. So you and like in those little kids and stuff like that, I remember my wrestling coach, and I was in middle school at this point, would always sit us down before matches. And he was like, when you leave this wrestling room, you're representing Canton South Wrestling. He was like, and my goal is to turn you into good men first, and then you'll be good wrestlers. He was like, you have to be good people first. He was like, I mean, I remember some of the best varsity kids on the team not wrestling matches because he found out that they were messing around outside of the wrestling room. So he was like, everybody got held to that standard. And seeing that, and you talked about like that brotherhood, just that camaraderie in general, that's a huge thing that made me want to join the service after wrestling.
And that is exactly when I joined the Army, and I was like, this is a brotherhood that I can relate to. Wrestling is a family, it's a community, and wherever you go, when someone's like, oh, I used to wrestle, it's like you have that connection immediately. I don't feel that with any other sport that I've done, but wrestling, I'm like, that's my family. Joining the Army, I'm like, this is that brotherhood again. And staying in the military, now Air Force, it's like, this is your family. This is your brotherhood as well.
You just changed from a singlet to a uniform.
Yes.
That's all it really is. And like basic training is cutting weight, you know, and going through all of that stuff, the dieting, the hard workouts, the sauna suits, and whatever other maybe not so smart ways you used to cut weight.
Sleeping in a trash bag?
Yeah, I never did that.
I never did that.
I had to do that.
I seriously didn't. I was like, I'm not doing that.
No,
but I did cut weight.
did.
I did have to cut weight.
Yeah. And so like all of that stuff, just hardship tends to bring people together. And then accomplishing things also brings people together. And that's all wrestling is. It's a lifestyle. I mean, you have to take that home with you all the time. I remember having to text my buddy. Me and him made each other accountability partners because my senior year I cut from like 215. I started the season. I cut down to 160. And we would text each other, be like, hey, you're not eating food, right? And you're like, no, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to have like some protein and then I'm going to go to bed. And we would hold each other accountable all the time. I remember him calling me. He'd be like, my parents are getting Chipotle. I don't know what to do. Like, come over. We'll go do something else.
I need help. I need to get into the bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Food's on its way home. I need to get out of here.
Right. I can smell it upstairs.
And like being where I was at, wrestling on the senior level, and it's a different kind of world. And now coming back to the high school kids, and they're like, oh, I can't eat today. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, listen. I like sit them down and I'm like, it's not that you can't eat. I was like, you just have to eat the right things.
Right.
And they think having like a burrito is like they're going to have to starve the rest of the week. And I'm like, don't eat that burrito, but eat some chicken and rice or some veggies. Like,
yep.
See, I never had that type of direction in high school. It was, and I don't know if this is just a lack of knowledge wise, like on like my coaches and whatnot. But say, I wish I had someone like you who had come back and said that kind of stuff because I thought the same way. It was like, well, this Triscuit in my beaker of water will have to do for today.
Yes,
Right.
no, and that's like,
I'm going to spit in a water bottle on the exercise bike.
And I'm like, listen, I was like, if you just eat this chicken and rice or veggies,
Nothing's going to happen.
I was like, yeah, and you're going to have more energy as opposed to not eating, or if you're just
Trying
like
to carb up right before a match or something and then
Yeah.
getting bloated.
And then like in the middle of tournaments, I see these kids eating candy bars. I'm like, what are you doing? You're going to get a cramp, or
Yeah.
you know, I was like,
You're
that's
gonna
straight
crash.
sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish that, you know, I got my uncle was a coach. He was actually one of the first state qualifiers to ever graduate from Canton South back in the day,
Oh, nice.
which is kind of how I got thrown into it because my cousins wrestled and one of them ended up joining the Corps. And I really looked up to Matt. And And so I started wrestling because Matt wrestled, and I wanted to be exactly like Matt, which is why I almost joined the Marine Corps, because I wanted to be exactly like my grandpa and Matt. But he kind of had a little bit of the dietary stuff and would help me out when I got to the high school level. But that's where everything kind of started to pick up steam, was at the high school level. So you wrestled straight through youth program all the way through high school?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I wrestled with the middle school as well. When I was in 5th grade, there was the first girls national tournament up in Michigan. And my parents actually lied about my age. It was for high schoolers. And somehow, I don't know how they worked it out. I think it was like maybe 7th, 8th, and then high schoolers were allowed to, but I was only in 5th grade. So they let me wrestle. Well, they lied about my age, so I could wrestle. And after that, they then put the middle school at grade school, middle school, and then high school, so everyone could wrestle in the tournament. So then as I was competing in this tournament at nationals, the director comes up to my parents and it's like, I know you lied about her age.
She's been here one too many times.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where my career really took a step forward with girls wrestling, is because I started wrestling at these girls national tournaments, and I was, either winning it or in the finals. And once that kicked off, I then, a junior in high school, it was 2004. That was the first Olympics for women's freestyle wrestling. And my mom had heard there was a local guy that was going out to the senior nationals out in Las Vegas. And my mom gets a hold of him and he's like, yeah, buy her ticket. I'll take care of her. She can stay with our Ohio team. And his name's Jim Spielman. And Jim, I had never met him. My parents put me on a plane, sent me to Las Vegas. I called Jim. I was like, hey, Jim, I'm on the escalator. And he's like, can you see me? I'm waving. I'm like, yep. And so I get down. I was like, hi, I'm Vanessa. Like meeting this guy in Las Vegas. My parents are like, see ya. Have fun.
This wouldn't fly today.
So I go and it's all the best Ohio guys really that are out there competing in the juniors, which is high school. And then I am wrestling in the women's, which is they're all trying to go to the Olympics, right? And so I go out there and I ended up placing, I think, 6th and top 7 qualified.
Oh, you wrestled out there.
I wrestled.
I was thinking that you just went out there to watch. Okay.
Nope.
That's
nope. They were like, here, you're going out there to wrestle.
Was it over a weekend or?
Yes, it was over a weekend. It was typically, I think, Easter weekend. So first time out in Vegas, all by myself, meeting these people for the first time. And they're like, yep, you're going to wrestle. And I ended up taking 6th and qualified me for the Olympic team trials. And I'm just like scratching my head. I'm like,
what the hell just happened?
It's up there. That's up there.
Did this just happen? I was like, I don't know what to do. I like started like getting real nervous. Yes. Yeah. And so then the Olympic trials was out in Indianapolis. And so my whole family, we all went out there, and Jim was out there. He was officiating the Greco men's side of it. And I'm out there, I'm just looking around, and I'm warming up next to Cale Sanderson and like Brandon Paulson. I'm just all these big names in wrestling, and Steve Mocco. And I'm like, I'm like fangirling right now. I don't know what to do. And so I ended up going 2-2 at the Olympic team trials as a junior in high school in 2004. And so then that just really, I started going to all these different tournaments in California, Minnesota, all these national tournaments. And that really put my career moving forward and put me on the map to go out to Colorado Springs and train at the Olympic Training Center after I graduated.
Yeah, it's like the first kick of the snowball down the avalanche, just had it going.
And wrestling females and males is completely different. Like I definitely wouldn't have been where I was at had I not been obviously wrestling these guys. And I was so fortunate to have a program that backed me 100% and pushing me. And, I wanted to quit when I was in high school. I just hated losing. I hated, having all these comments made about me wrestling. Right. And my coaches were like, no, you're staying here. My parents backed me up. My brother was one of the coaches, and they were just unbelievably supportive of me. And I'm forever grateful for the Mount Vernon Wrestling program and having my back 100% through the years.
Well, it's probably. I mean, that's why you're so passionate about giving back now.
Yes, I mean, they didn't ask for money from us, and we obviously paid our dues into the program and whatever the fees were, but anything extra, that was all on their own time and just supporting me, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's I mean, we're talking about the impact of like you telling a child something, but also like if you're like a pioneer in something, or you're somebody that is being belittled or being told that they can't accomplish something because they're different, having that support system to fall back on, where it's like, hey, regardless of what all these other people are saying, we believe in you. We believe in what you're trying to do. We believe in what you're going for. That's immeasurable. 100% immeasurable. So, I mean, if anybody is listening to this and hearing it, this podcast, all the other podcasts that we've recorded, that the entire mission of it is for you to believe that you're capable of it, that we have your back, that we're going to be able to reach out and help you if you want the assistance, that you have a team here at the Apex that believes in you and what you're trying to accomplish. That's just something that popped into my head.
Overarching concept of everything that we believe in here. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Me and I know I started this because I believed in people, and RJ 100% came on because his entire life has just wanted to help other people get to where they want to go.
I've just never known how. I've tried many of things, but most of it just never panned out for me. But I'm good at talking, and if I can do that and I can lend a good listening ear to somebody and help them through stuff, then I'm happy at the end of the day. So,
Right.
But I mean, to what you said, wrestling was hard enough. I mean, just for me, I had my parents up my ass all the time at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, because they
off-season camps is like
because in high school I started doing
happens.
Greco and freestyle too,
Yes.
because I wasn't playing any other sports, so it was year round at that point.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as I stepped on that mat, they goaded me into it every year. I'd step onto the mat for the first day of practice, and I'd be like, I hate this. I was like, I don't know why I'm back. And my mom would be like, well, you know what you mean your father say, if you start it, you got to finish it out to the end of the season. If you don't want to come back next year, we won't make you. 7th grade. 8th grade, 9th grade.
Same exact
Why
time.
am I here? And I did. I finished it out all the way. But during the seasons and everything like that, it helped a lot just to have them. And I mean, I wasn't, having the mass majority trying to force me out of the sport either. It was just me.
And it's not like, and it's not only them forcing, it's like them being physical. I every single match, it felt like the kid was out to hurt me. I mean, once I qualified for the Olympic team trials and I was winning these national tournaments, they kind of knew more about me. And so it wasn't so bad. But these other kids that didn't know anything about me, I don't know how many times my elbows were just torqued and wrenched. And I just come off the mat crying because I was in so much pain, because it was like they were physically trying to break me. And my coach, I didn't know this, but he went up to my parents and he's like, I am now seeing they are not here to wrestle her. Pull her out at any time. Yeah. And my parents are like, that's on her. If she wants to pull herself out, she knows when. And they're like, she's out here to wrestle, and that's what she's going to do. So
I think that was a good choice on your parents' part.
Yes.
Because I think there would have been a lot of
there could be a lot of tension.
Oh, well, not just
like
that, but a
happens.
lot of missed opportunities if they had pulled you out early. I mean, that's my parents' big thing growing up with me and my sister was they'll let us go and do and try anything if we want to. They're never one, they would never brought anything up and they were like, hey, you have to do this, or you have to leave this, or, go left, go right. But they're like, hey, if you want to try it, we'll support you 100%. And if you say you want to walk away from it, then we're not going to be mad because at least you tried.
yeah.
So, but for them to, step in early like that, I think it could have been detrimental to your career as a whole.
Oh, heck yeah.
But if you're the one that's in there and that's saying, hey, like this, I see it myself, they're not here to wrestle me, and that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I think we'll kind of make it through the rest of your career timeline, and then I'll be interested to jump back and return to some of the just values and stuff from all three of our perspectives, what we take from wrestling and brought into life in general. So you got through your high school career, you're going through all these different tournaments and everything like that, wrestling at nationals. which, like I said, I mean, outside of season tournaments or even inside of season tournaments and camps and everything like that, that's what really makes a difference in wrestling. What people don't get is it's the off season a lot of times.
Oh gosh,
that really increases your skill for the in season.
and it does, and that's what some of these kids they come in November, and by February they're like, why am I not like on that podium? And I'm like, what do you do in off season? I was like, once you stop wrestling in March, if you're not doing anything, how do you expect
You regress.
Yes.
Yep.
I was like, how do you expect to advance when you're not doing anything to advance yourself?
Yep.
Did you do any out of seat? Did you do any Greco or freestyle?
So like the Olympics for women, it's freestyle.
It is freestyle. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So once I was maybe a freshman or sophomore, I started competing out at Fargo for the junior
I love
nationals.
Fargo.
Yeah, and it was freestyle for women, and so that's when I really started getting into freestyle as well, and training with like Jim Spielman, and really
That made a massive difference in high school for me.
Well-
Going and doing freestyle and Greco, I think I started like my sophomore year or something like that. There were kids that just never saw any of the techniques and stuff that go into the the two other forms outside of collegiate wrestling and whatnot. And if I hadn't been a 3-sport athlete like most of my life, I would have 100% would have wanted to get into it way earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like I was always a 3-sport. I did every kind of sport you could think of. And once I realized that wrestling was
What you wanted.
where my talent was, I had to quit everything else. And that was year round. Wrestling is what I did. And when I was coming through, Jessie Shirley, she had got accepted into Cumberland down in Kentucky. They had a women's program, and it was freestyle. So college for women, it's freestyle. So I knew going in that I need to start working freestyle.
Practicing for that. Oh,
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
Very smart.
And then with the Olympics coming out, that's when I was like, well,
There we go.
Yep. Freestyle is where my focus was. So once I was a junior and senior in school, the folk style season, the high school boys season, it didn't mean as much to me because I knew freestyle is where I needed to be. But I still, cared about it and wanted to finish the season out with my brothers on the team.
Yeah.
Now, for the people that are listening that may not have quite an understanding of the differences between collegiate, freestyle, and Greco,
Do
wanna
they go by
explain
folk
those?
or collegiate?
Most people will
folk
just
style,
say
that's
folk
fine.
style.
Folk style.
Collegiate's
Yeah.
more your college.
college level, technically, yeah. So, do you want to explain the difference to
Okay,
people?
so folk style is what you see in the schools. Most people can visually see that one. That's the most that they watch. And then freestyle is very similar to folk style, except there's different points. Let's say you get thrown to your back. That's a higher point value. And anytime your back is exposed in freestyle, that's points. In folk style, you have to hold the person on their back for like 3 counts, and then you get back points. So,
Yeah, whether it's
So
in a tilt
for
or
a visual example, if you held someone in folk style for 3 seconds, you get the points. You could basically just do barrel rolls with somebody in freestyle and just continuously rack up point after
correct.
point.
And then so like Greco, it's similar to freestyle where the back exposed, except you can't use the legs at advantage. I can't wrap the legs up. I can't shoot into the
You
leg.
can't touch the legs, period.
Correct. So that's
all
where
upper
you
body.
see all those pretty throws
Yeah.
in magazines
the
and stuff.
salt toe and the hip
Yeah.
toss, all that good
Yeah.
stuff.
The suplex.
we had a kid my senior year, would have been my junior year, that made it all the way to the state tournament. I think he placed 4th at state with nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing but a hip toss.
Oh,
That is the
Hip toss to the
only-
back?
That is
Yeah,
the
straight
only
to
thing
the
he
mat.
had.
Yeah.
He wrestled. He weighed 220 pounds, but he wrestled heavyweight. And he would take these big guys.
They
He
don't
was
touch.
shorter.
They usually don't touch the legs.
He
anyway.
was shorter, and they would never try to go for the legs or anything, but he was quick because he wrestled. He was like 220, but he decided to wrestle up, and it was the best decision my coach ever made for him because he was faster than all the heavyweights.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd get right underneath of him, hip toss him, and once a big man's on his back, big man's on his
It's
back.
like a
about
turtle.
done. Yeah, it's a done deal
Yep,
at
it's
that
a done
point.
deal.
Yeah.
And
usually.
he'd hip toss him, he'd just hold, pin, done. I don't think any of his matches either went all 3 periods and like lost by decision because he almost never won if it
Sometimes
went
you
all
just
3
find your
periods.
niche like that.
And
Yeah.
it was either pin or he lost. But it was almost always within the first like 45 seconds of a match or in the second period, the first, couple of seconds of the second period, hip toss pin.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching him like, what the hell? Like, what happened? And I found out he went to a Greco-Roman camp over that
And that's what I
previous summer.
tell these kids. I'm like, try and get into Greco, try and get into freestyle, because that little bit will take your technique and your knowledge to a whole nother level.
It explodes into areas that you don't even.
Because you're able to scramble, you're able to get more familiar with these different positions. And I can't stress it enough. I'm like, get into freestyle and Greco.
I mean, they in high school they teach, everybody basically gets taught the same, basic techniques. And then like when I started doing Greco and freestyle, it was like I'm in this position, but now instead of having option A and B, I also have option C, D, and F on top of it. And then if you're doing that, if not just having a leg up on a competition, 95%, I would say, of the other kids that just are generically in a high school wrestling program don't know about option C, D, E, or
correct.
F.
And that's
so
what,
they never see it coming.
What is happening right now?
that's what these kids that are on the team that haven't been doing, on our team that haven't been doing freestyle or Greco. And we go to these different tournaments and they're like, what is that? And I was like, see, exactly. That's why you need to get into freestyle and Greco.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of doors. And I mean, basically, I always thought of wrestling as, the more you know about techniques and stuff like that, one, the better off you are and the better then you are to counter whatever your opponent is doing well. So just having those options played a huge role in me having just a massive spike in, my regular season matches in high school.
And so I'll just, do a quick plug to apply that to life in general. If you're in a position, whether it's a business position, like I know I'll relate it to my job in the military right now in personnel, right? So personnel, we do a lot of human resources actions, and almost everybody, the beautiful thing about the office that I work in is everybody knows a little bit about everybody else's job. And they did that on purpose. When we came through, I've been in 6 years now. When I first came in, they had me sit with, operating a secret system that we operate. They had me sit and learn how to do the front counter. They had me sit and learn how to do promotions. They had me sit and learn how to do retirements and all this other kind of stuff. So I know it enough to be dangerous in each area, but I also know who to ask questions to. So if you take that little bit, like you said, even though I'm technically assigned under customer service and that's my wheelhorse, because I know a little bit about the other sections, I'm more utilizable in the area as a whole. So just like in wrestling, if you know a little bit about some other techniques, your wheelhouse gets elevated. And people don't make those connections sometimes. They're like, you know what? I'm an accountant. I need to be an accountant and focus on accounting. But if you go and take a business management class, you're now able to see more of the picture inside of your organization. You become more applicable and more dangerous in that area.
In any type of situation where you're working with people in those types of areas, knowing what they do also helps you understand your job better.
Right.
Oh, exactly.
So, like, even here, I don't know much about mics and how to set stuff up, but I'll pick your guys' brains as much as I can. So at least, if need be in a pinch, I can help, with the phantom power switch.
Yeah.
But then it helps me, like, understand, like, where I need to be positioned on a mic, how it needs to be set up and that kind of stuff. And I've basically done that my whole entire life just because I'm so friendly and because I enjoy talking to people. But it's easier to, go and even have those minuscule conversations with people you work with on a daily basis to get an understanding of their process for an entire day helps you with your entire workload. So, I mean, like you said, you can apply that to basically anything. Learn and retain. Just be a sponge.
Yeah, listen twice as much as you talk. You have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. So you made it through your high school career. So now you're graduated. Was there a gap between you joining the Army and graduation, or how did that type of?
So I graduated in 2005, and right after that, I moved out to the Olympic Training Center, and I trained out there with the head coach was Terry Steiner, and he still is. And I trained there for 4 years with the women's freestyle wrestling team, and I got to travel all over the world with competitions. And
did you have to qualify to go there in the first place, or
so
is that
they were
just
doing kind of like a they were bringing some of the top high school females and kind of building their program up from there. And so that we were with some older females, and then there was us young college
The young bucks coming in.
the young high school girls coming in. So that's where we worked out there for a while, and then that's when I decided to. I was broke a lot. I mean, financially and physically, and I had already had a few surgeries before I joined, and I just felt that the military in the long run is where I wanted to be, and that I should get a jump on joining.
Getting your feet in the door.
And I was fortunate enough to know the coach of the Army World Class Athlete Program. So once I joined, I asked basically to be in the program, and they had to look at my credentials. And so I was accepted into the Army World Class Athlete Program, where I trained with them for about 3 years before I decided to be done wrestling in 2012.
And so for people that don't know what the World Class Athlete Program is, why don't you explain what that process looks like?
So the Army World Class Athlete Program is an organization within the Army, which your mission is to make the Olympic team. Like, that is your mission. And so people ask, how do they get in? Well, they have an application process, or if your credentials, because at the time when I had joined, I was number 2 in the country. And so that automatically was like an acceptance into the program. And so others will do like a training camp, and then they'll try out for the team. And if they see a potential or they can groom you, they'll bring you into the program.
Gotcha.
But it's only Olympic sports.
Ah,
Gotcha.
So, but
do they send you to boot and everything? And how does that process
well, I
look
mean,
like?
yeah, I went to boot camp
Okay.
and I did all of that. I was a 42 Alpha, which is human resource.
Okay.
And so I went to school for that as well. And then I came back, and immediately I hit the ground running with training
Gotcha.
for
now where was that at?
Colorado Springs as well.
okay.
Yeah. So all of it was in Colorado Springs. It's just 20 miles or 20-minute drive away from each other.
Gotcha. So you worked your way up to number 2 in the country while you were wrestling at the Olympic training facility.
Correct.
Okay.
And then once I got out of the Army and I came back, hit the ground running, I ran into some more injuries. And I tore the labrum in my hip, and my feet were jacked up. So it was a struggle, and it wasn't uphill.
Yeah.
And so once I didn't make the 2012 team, I decided that surgeries are a must. And so then I had surgery on my hip, and then I had surgery on both of my feet. And at that point, I was like, well, I think this is time to hang up my shoes. And mentally, it was that's all I knew, you know? And
Right.
so it was very difficult to walk away. And it's like, life outside of wrestling, what do I do?
Mhm.
And I took a break.
But
And
you've
I
done
was
it for so long.
well, yeah. And then I was in a bad relationship for quite a while as well. And so that was a wrestler. And so both of those and being around wrestling, I just couldn't deal with at that point. And so I walked away from 2012 until I moved back to Ohio and helped coach the high school team. I completely washed my hands, and
Sometimes you need that break, though.
Yeah,
you need just that separation. To,
and it
Or
was
to get perspective on
well,
everything,
to
too.
align everything else in your life. I mean, it's very easy. Like for me, I'll warn people before I get ready for a show, because it's like, this is all consuming at all hours of the day, while even while I'm sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, like, I will ignore parts of my life that I know that I shouldn't.
yeah.
And I know not to the same extent now, but it was kind of like that in wrestling, you know, getting in high school when I was getting ready for, you know, districts or sectionals or states or anything like that, or, you know, cutting weight for, you know, a big tournament and whatnot. But at the level that you're doing, it follows you home. It starts the minute you wake up in the morning, and it
You
sometimes
eat,
follows
breathe,
you into
and
your
sleep.
sleep. Yeah.
You eat,
So-
breathe, and sleep wrestling.
For doing it at all that time, as hard as it would have been, it was basically a necessity for you.
It was my
to-
identity.
Yeah, exactly. And then to walk away from that had to have been grueling, but an absolute necessity just to realign everything else that was going on.
It was. And walking away, I ended up, you know, having to hit rock bottom mentally before I was able to come back up. So it was about 6 months after I had stopped wrestling where I just hit rock bottom, and it was just like a reality check, like, what are you doing with your life? And so I just got rid of all those friends, those negative, like, birds in your ear, and I just had to focus on what made me happy. And living out in Colorado is beautiful. Like, that is where I'm going to go back to. My parents disagree with that, but
yeah, parents don't like you moving away. Period.
Yes, no, they're like, we finally got you back, and now we're going to lose you again. I'm like, well, I'll stay here for a while.
I've heard it is very nice out there.
Mm-hmm. And so, being able to go hiking and just really ground myself, and finding my two best friends are out there, and that brought my happiness back. Mm-hmm. And so once I brought my happiness back, my sister was preparing to deploy, and my mom, so she has MS, my mom does, and she has been in the military for, she was diagnosed, I think, in 2010. So she's been fighting, this MS battle, and she was about to retire because of it. And so I was like, well, it sounds like this is the time to get home and help out.
Yeah.
So I got home, and
Bree's sister showed up in the unit.
Yeah, I was Bree's sister.
We all knew about it before she got there.
My sister
was amped.
I think she is a slight creep. She
hyped you up.
She had me on the background of her computer as my picture. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, we all knew exactly.
Yeah,
who
we're like, we
Vanessa
know who that is
before
already.
She got there.
No debriefing here.
Like, I didn't even have to put a face to the name. I was just like, "Oh, that's Bree's sister."
Yeah,
I've seen her out on the computer.
Yeah. Everyone who I was, and so, anyways, I ended up moving back, and what was it, February, and then my sister deployed in April, and then my mom retired in July, I believe. And so we were all in the military for a brief second together, and then mom went away, and well, she didn't go away. She just left the military. And then Bree was deployed, and she now lives in Texas. I was like, what the heck? I moved back, and now
everybody's gone.
Everybody's gone.
Like, well, it's just me out here, the lone Oswalt.
Hanging out on base. But I know your family is very tight knit.
We are
them
super
in the area
close
and stuff like that. And then, so now, is your brother still in the area now?
So he lives down in Dayton, and that is about 2 hours from where we live. And he volunteers with a West Carrollton wrestling team, and then he's a youth minister down there.
Gotcha. So, all right, so we made it. I honestly want to kind of rewind and go, getting to being second in the nation, right? I believe one of the interviews that I watched on YouTube here was like you qualifying for a tournament or making it to a world's team. I can't remember what
national
team.
Team. Yeah. So I think that was the interview that I had just won my semis match in 2009, and I was about to face off with Elena Prishkova, who was number one in the country at that time, and I ended up falling short wrestling her. But I was very focused. I got rid of all that negative, and I was very focused at that time in my life, and eating right. I was doing everything right, and I was able to get to the finals, and I fell short in the finals. And
sometimes, I mean, that falling short, and this, you may not agree, RJ may not agree, but this is something that I liked. So when I fought in the Golden Gloves for boxing, I made it all the way to the finals, and my guy didn't show up, like straight up didn't come to the ring. So I never didn't even get a chance to fight him. So I have a trophy that says I'm a Golden Gloves fighter that sits in the back of my closet. It sat in the back of my closet for a long time. Now, I used to not be willing to talk about it.
Now he
shows
it
I
to
didn't earn
everyone.
that. I just hold it up. No, but so it's like, but that falling short initially was horrible. You know what I mean? It like hit me in the face. I was like, I didn't earn this. This is horrible. Like, I just felt like I got cheated. Like, I was doing everything right. I had all of the preparation. I was there mentally. The diet was right. The conditions are right. And not getting the chance to prove it or falling short, I think, was the best thing in the long run, because I look back at it and I'm like, that journey mentally where it's like, I accepted that as long as I gave everything that I had and I knew that I had given everything that I could possibly give to that situation, I was successful and I can give that to other people. And it's winning teaches you stuff, but losing teaches you more, I think. Whether it's, I'm trying to figure out how to put it into words, like that feeling. But you have, like my dad always remembers a question that he got wrong. So my dad was a little bit of a nerd growing up. Okay. So he was on like a trivia debate team or something along those lines. And he got a question wrong about Greek mythology in like the state finals of this trivia, mythology trivia that they were at. And he always remembers that question. But he was like, we went back and he was like, I like went and started giving back, kind of like how you're giving back to programs. He was like, I was tutoring people and I was helping out here and I was helping out here because I wanted to set other people up for success. It gave me a drive to want to set other people up, to get them to chase the journey and everything. And he's like, that one question always sticks in my head and it never leaves because it's like the one thing that I fell short on. And I was like, I knew the answer, but I couldn't get it out, or like the conditions just didn't line up where I lost.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that's the one that I remember. He's like, I've won like multiple other things, but they don't stick.
Yeah.
And I can't use the wins as a teaching experience for other people. It's the loss that I had that I use as a teaching experience for other people. So like when you're giving back to other people, like you're teaching these programs and everything else like that now, suffering like that, a hard loss like that, especially at that level when you've in the zone and you've given everything you've had, like mentally for you sucks. I mean, it's horrible.
It sucks.
Yeah, it's bad. But being able to say, hey, like when you're talking to somebody else, then when they lose and it's something super important to them, you can be like, hey, here's a story about me and how I dealt with it and where I'm at. And you're able to give back to them. Whereas if you would have
be
won,
willing to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be whoa. You have to be willing to learn from your losses. That's the thing. I mean, nobody sets out to lose. Like you have to lose,
right?
But you have to look back on it. And you have to take everything from that loss and be willing to learn from it. I think that's a lot of mistakes some people make. Yep. I mean.
Because you can hold a grudge against the loss for forever.
It's not easy to learn from a loss. No. You have to, take your own wall down and kind of be like, hey, this sucks. I'm obviously not happy with it, but, this is what happened. This is what I'm taking away from it. And this is now what is hopefully not going to happen in the future.
And that's for every part in your life. Mm-hmm. It's not just competitions. It's, in your work life, in your relationships, it's every aspect of your life, being able to learn from those experiences. And like when I was out there and in this bad relationship that was on and off for quite some time, being able to get away and become a better person. Yeah. I'm not that person that I once was. I think a lot of people can say that about themselves. And it's because you've learned. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely...
Yeah, you have, and I think what I was, I went on that ramble there because my brain gets excited and my mouth can't keep up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you squirreled.
Yeah, I squirreled. We're not diving back down that rabbit hole.
Squirrel hole? There are ground squirrels if you really want to
get... That's the only thing people are going to pay attention to out of this whole episode. They're going to be like, oh, we talked about wrestling for an hour.
You made your squirrel bed. You get to sleep in it.
Oh, man. Everyone's going to... We're going to have to do like an episode on squirrels. Oh, my God.
We'll bring Brie back for that one.
Yeah.
Right.
She's expert.
Yeah, she's going to hear this. She's going to be like, what the hell, guys? I don't even remember my train. You made me squirrel. I know
what I want to ask her. If you just want me to take over.
Yeah, just go for it.
You said you basically separated yourself from everything you were doing out in Colorado, wrestling, people included. Mm-hmm. So when you moved back here, what finally sucked you back into helping coaching? I mean, after, living it and then stepping away from it and then stepping back into it to any degree, whether it's coaching or, going back into wrestling yourself, what was the driving force that was like, okay, I'm going to go and coach after, separating myself away from all of it for so long?
The program Mount Vernon Wrestling had given me so much, and it was I had to. Like, that's my turn. Like, I have to give back to a program that gave me so much. And right now I'm a volunteer assistant with the boys high school team, and I help out with the youth as much as I can as well. And that is just my drive. When I first moved back, our head coach, he'd been the head coach for about 20 years, was killed in a car accident.
Ooh.
So our program was just hurting.
Devastated.
Yes, he was killed in a car accident right after Christmas in, what was it, 2017?
2 years ago.
So 2016. So I had moved back in 2017, in January 2017.
Gotcha.
So it was like a couple weeks apart. So when I moved back, it was just, our coaching staff was just devastated. The wrestlers, were devastated. Yeah. And, you know, those guys had to take their break because it happened right in the middle of wrestling season. That was the foundation. John Brown was the foundation.
I remember hearing about that.
I mean, he was a part of a lot of Ohio wrestling and taking kids down to Junior Olympics and doing different. He was from Toledo area as well. He coached up there, but he was the foundation of our program, and that foundation had disappeared, and it was just at a complete loss. Our program was just mentally, and so when I got back, not that it was in a rebuilding, but it was like, what do we do? And so the season had ended, and then I made my commitment the following year, like I will be on staff.
2017 or 2018?
Going into 2017 to 18.
Gotcha.
So this is my second full season with the high school team. And so I was like, this is my commitment. I'm helping this team out. And the kids were, I love the kids. They were a little hesitant, you know.
That's what I really wanted to know, because I've never had a female wrestling coach. I was like, how do the boys take it? I mean, it would be different if you were helping younger kids, but we're talking about high school kids. High school kids are ruthless.
Yeah, they are. But the thing is, a lot of those kids came up through the programs, and so when I would come home for Christmas, I would help out with the
so they already
youth program.
Knew you.
So yeah, they kind of knew me already, but to you know, feel my strength and like I snapping them down or just, you know, going in on a shot. I think it was a realization of like, oh crap, she means business, you know?
It's no joke.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we did going into the season, we had gone to this scrimmage at another school, and I jumped in on one of the groups were wrestling, and I started wrestling with the kids, and I was just I was wrestling live is what we call it. So I wasn't holding back on the other kids that I was wrestling. I was like, I need to gain respect from my team. They need to see.
I was just thinking at the beginning of every season, every new kid should just have to wrestle you. Just like right off, like the gatekeeper.
Right.
And that's what
if you can survive 3 minutes.
Right.
You were in a spot.
And that's what I was like, I need to gain respect from my own team. So I went out there and I was wrestling the boys. And so after that, like the kids were just like, hey coach. I'm like, all right, I gained the respect now. We're good.
That's awesome. That's really exciting.
Establishing that respect early on is a huge thing. I mean, whether you're male, female, whatever your position is and stuff like that, if you're willing to draw, I know our coach every year, we would have Hell Week, the first week of practices, because every year there'd be a bunch of football players that would try to come out. There'd be all these people that would try to fill the mats. And so like all the varsity guys, or like those of us that have been wrestling for forever, would be like, let's see how long this lasts. Because our coach was also the cross country coach. So we would like run cross country distances and then go and do drills and then wrestle live or stuff like that. So we'd have power hours where, you know, you're wrestling live in like Shark Tank style formation. You got 4 people, right? For those of you that don't know, there's 4 people on a mat. One person's in the middle. You do 2-minute time spans. One person switches in, that person stays in the middle, and a fresh person switches in every 2 minutes. So you're wrestling.
Yes.
You're wrestling 6 minutes straight, and you're just getting demolished by a fresh person every 2 minutes. And it's like they do not hold back. It's beautiful.
Because they've been sitting there. They're like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, they're watching. They're like, oh, he's starting to get tired. I'm going to pick that left leg.
I can just hear my coach, 1 versus 2. 1 versus 3. Like, oh, God. Please stop.
You get to the last one, you're like,
like, oh, yeah, we have an uneven number. You guys are going to have a 5th guy. No.
And, like, I remember at the end of that week, maybe 10%, 15% of those football players were left. I can only remember 2 or 3 guys that actually made it through high school. Because the football players every year would talk crap and be like, "Oh, we're gonna come in. It's not that bad. Football's way harder." And then they're like, "Screw this.
Yeah, right.
I can't do this."
So moving forward, right now I think I'm the only female coach coaching in Ohio, and we still don't have sanctioned girls wrestling here in Ohio, and there's a lot of other states that do have it.
How do you go about doing that?
Okay, so I didn't know the process until recently. I had reached out to Ohio High School Athletic Association, and I was just like, hey, I hear there's a meeting about girls wrestling. What can I do to help? I have, my experience as a wrestler and now a coach. I'm willing to help. And he emails me back, what are you talking about? And I'm like, and he was just like, it's a quarterly meeting and talking about girls wrestling is not on the discussion. I was like, okay. And so I get this email back from the director of operations and this long email and basically telling me I have to go through the wrestling coaches committee, and they have to propose to Ohio High School Athletic Association. And I was like, I know the president.
Now,
Bureaucracy.
so is that so that the girls can have their own tournaments, own teams,
own sanctioned girls wrestling? Like the boys have boys wrestling, the girls would have girls wrestling.
Gotcha.
Their own tournaments,
So
their
then
own state.
would that completely separate? So there wouldn't be girls wouldn't be on the boys team for regular seasons would both coincide at the same time, but there would be a girls and
That's
a boys.
what we're trying to figure out right now. So
yeah, there's a lot of the more you think about it, the more details.
There's a
that
lot
you're
of
like,
logistics.
Yeah.
So right now, and I'm talking with the president, and so I called the president up. I'm like, what on earth do we need to do? Like, let's get the ball rolling. He's like, well, I have this proposal. I'd like you to check it out.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was like, we have a meeting in April, and I want to propose this. And I'm like, all right.
So you 't it coming up here pretty soon.
Yes.
Nerve-wracking.
Yes. So I've got together with a lot of the parents of the successful females right now in Ohio that are national team, and some of the coaches, and getting together a proposal that makes the best sense, right? And I don't know what that is, and we're just trying to figure that out. And so we have our proposal coming up in April. And so we have a meeting at the end of the month with the president of the coaches committee to make sure we're finalizing these pieces and have the best proposal fit. And so what it will end up having to be, from what it sounds like, that there'll be a girls' state tournament, but it's put on by like the coaches committee as opposed to Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Gotcha.
Kind of like quote unquote club for the first couple years.
Gotcha.
Until we can really figure out the logistics. How many girls do we have wrestling?
Game. It's a big numbers game. If you don't have the bodies to fill the spots, then it becomes a whole other mess.
Correct. Because I know some schools struggle to even have a full lineup for the boys.
Yeah, exactly.
So trying to figure out what is best for girls wrestling and the growth of it in Ohio. Because right now we're sitting at about 250 girls that's wrestling in the high school. That is amazing. When I was wrestling, I didn't see another female, and now I go to these tournaments and I'm seeing a handful of females at every tournament.
Yeah, that's what you said before the interview. Because what we had talked about earlier, I can only remember a few, and now you're saying that there's a lot of little girls going out for. And then, I think it would help to know that they have that in high school, especially as a younger. Like it was hard for me to be like, well, baseball has a professional sport. Football has a professional sport. All I have is the Olympics, and those guys look like they just get the crap kicked out of them 95% of the time. Like, I don't want to go and do that. But even for a girl wrestling in, middle school, grade school, to be like, well, you don't even have your own state tournament. You don't have any type of organization to, you being able to make your way up a ranking system. To have that state tournament it's more inviting, I guess, is what I'm trying to get across.
And it's been helping that, we have a whole bunch of colleges that now have
programs.
Yep, women's wrestling. And girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport right now. And this year alone, we had our second girl qualify for the Ohio Boys State Tournament, and she ended up going out there winning her first match in overtime.
That's awesome.
She ended up falling short her next two matches, but
still, she was there.
Heck yeah, Olivia Shore, she's making a name for herself, and she's doing great things. She's a cadet world team member, and so she's no joke. These females they mean business out here. They
have to mean more business than most of the boys.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was There's the boxing gym that I fight at. There's female fighters that they have. I mean, it's almost worse when I go in and I try to spar with one of them versus one of the guys because they business, all business.
Straight
all the
business.
time.
There's a difference between having to prove your skills and having to prove that you belong there in the first place.
Right.
And when you're, fighting to prove the latter of those two, there's a lot more stress and a lot more
fire.
money, a lot of more money riding on that.
Yeah, and they're just. I mean, one of the female fighters is they're just day in, day out, eat, live, breathe, like boxing. I mean, it's just that's what it is. I mean, you're going at it, and it's combos after combo after everything. And it's awesome to see. I love, like, my sister boxes, and like that's phenomenal for her. It's boosted her confidence. She feels way more comfortable in social situations. She's just, and we were talking about that before we even came on here. Like, what better way to build confidence and self-defense and whatever else if you're afraid of, parents are putting people in these bubbles. Like, what better way to build confidence in a young female than to teach her? You're teaching self-defense.
Yeah, a combative
and discipline
sport.
and everything
Yeah.
else in a combative sport in a sanctioned, controlled environment where she can learn to be comfortable suplexing somebody, taking somebody down.
So I guess my next question for you is, if like someone like me or Jan who wants to support like the cause, everything that you want inevitably in the future to happen with, girls wrestling, is there anything that like we can do?
Well, we're just trying to get the word out there that, we're working on getting girls sanctioned wrestling in Ohio, and the Ohio girls national team has come up with this hashtag stand with us. And that's raising awareness, trying to get the support of coaches, families, parents, anyone out there to help grow this sport. And really, that's where we stand. And they ask, what can they do? And we just say, go to your administration. Say you want girls wrestling, you want sanction, because then they can go to the coaches committee and push them as well. So it's not just, us parents and coaches.
Domino effect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's everyone pushing to your administration at your school saying, you have a girl interested, but they don't want to wrestle the boys.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're coming. There's so many girls that want to wrestle, but they don't want to wrestle the girls. Or they don't want to wrestle the boys. They only want to wrestle the girls.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it would make it, I mean, there's just a slew of effects that would have. I mean, that ball is already rolling and it's going to happen.
How many other states, I mean, I don't know if you have this information off the top of your head, but if you had to guess, how many states have, you showed us a little chart earlier, and I think it said there was like 5,000 some female wrestlers in the state of California.
Yeah, California was one of the first states to sanction girls wrestling. So their number, and they're a huge state as is.
Massive.
Yeah.
Right.
So their numbers are just off the charts right now. But right now, I think there's 12 or 13 states that have sanctioned girls wrestling in them, New Jersey being one of the newest ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so a lot of states are having like a girls' state tournament, and it's not quite sanctioned. So that's where we're going to be hopefully next year with a girls' state sanctioned tournament.
Okay. That's exciting. That's really exciting. Well, I hope everything goes great in April.
Me
Yeah,
too.
no joke.
Me too.
Okay, so if people want to follow, so it's the Ohio Girls National Team
On Facebook.
is where you can go on Facebook to like that kind of stuff. And then hashtag stand with us. We're going to be working together with Vanessa here to get some T-shirts for you guys that we'll be able to pass.
We'll have
out,
all these
but
links and stuff for you guys
in the show
too.
notes and everything else. So I mean, we're to the point now where, I don't think we'd even need to dive into all the positive effects of wrestling because there's been
We've talked about it many a
the
times
entire
on
episode
here.
have been the positive effects that wrestling can have as far as discipline and teaching you humility and that one-on-one combatives where you don't have any other fingers to point at anybody but you as far as effort and everything else. So unless RJ has anything else, we'll just open up the floor to you as our last.
Nope. I'm good. I've actually felt like I've done quite a bit of talking. I can feel it in my voice, but
It's because it's wrestling, you can relate to it.
yeah,
you understand
it's
it.
exciting. It's exciting, and it's exciting to
Brings back a
hear
lot of
the
memories for me,
other
too.
side of the coin. Because like once again, I wish we would have recorded everything that I started coming out of my mouth the minute that you got to the studio and whatnot. But I remember there was a couple girls that came out for our high school team or middle school team at some point. And then, I think some of them came out as a joke and weren't taking it seriously just to, stir up crap in the school and make us feel uncomfortable, whatever. But within that, I know for a fact there was a couple of girls that wanted to be there and then, not just wanted to be there, but they showed massive potential in the few weeks that they were there. And I'd like to see, it not be to the point where they're scared off and they feel like they can't be part of a program. Because as far as I'm concerned and the people that I grew up with and, that brotherhood, I still talk to the guys that I started wrestling with in second grade and wrestled with all the way up through high school. And to be completely honest, I don't think if there was a girl who was really there to take it seriously and wanted to be part of the team, I don't think any of us would have turned her away. Wrestling is one of the most,
accepting,
inclusive and accepting groups in our entire, high school demographic of sports that you can play. And I think if someone a female had been there and really wanted to be part of it, I think any program, unless you have an outlandish group of kids or an individual that really just has a stupid reason for them not wanting to be there, I don't think any real wrestling program that wants to do well and wants to see other kids succeed in the sport would turn someone away, regardless of gender.
Right. So with that, I mean, if you talk about the things that you say to inspire the little girls and stuff like that and them looking up to you and everything. So you have the opportunity right now behind the microphone to put that message out to
and this reaches a lot of people all over the place.
So,
not that you're putting pressure on her.
No,
Holy
but
crap.
You have a platform to even reach more ears than what you might think right off the bat.
So if someone was on the fence about wanting to wrestle as a female, what would you tell them?
Boy or girl, it applies to everybody.
Right.
You got to first start with the parents because that's who it comes from. And so I ask parents and the community to support females wrestling because, for one, we're not going anywhere. We're growing and we're not going to go anywhere. So the more you can support the girls wrestling, the faster we'll be able to get that sanction. So supporting that is where I stand with the girls. What I want to say is keep fighting. It's bigger than us. And girls wrestling has it's taken me all over the world. I have made some of the closest friends. It's more than just wrestling in itself, and it's what you gain from it, the discipline and the community. And so I just say keep fighting, and if it's something that you want to do, dream big because you can always chase those dreams, and someday you'll catch those dreams. And so I say keep dreaming, and the hashtag stand with us. That's our movement. And follow the Ohio Girls National Team on Facebook. And we have upcoming tournaments and upcoming clinics. You'll be able to follow all the girls on there as well. And then there's a pretty big clinic that's going on June 8th and 9th, I believe, at St. Vincent St. Mary's. You have Justin Harry Lester. He's an Olympian. And Randy Miller. She was on the women's freestyle Olympic team. She was, I believe, the bronze medalist in 2008, and she will be one of the clinicians there as well. So
awesome.
That'll be June 8th and 9th, and for all females. And part of the proceeds will go back to helping fund the Girls Ohio team going to nationals.
Cool. When is their nationals?
Nationals are in July.
Awesome.
Out in Fargo.
Coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right. Well, with that, so we'll be posting all the links to be able to support and everything like that in the show notes, obviously, the website, pushing it out on social media. I'm super excited to release this episode.
This is a good episode. It was a pleasure,
really,
by the way.
really
It was
close.
very nice talking to you.
Thank you so much. Sure. You guys are awesome.
I've been bugging her to come out here for a while.
It always seems like that. We pester
it's like in the middle of wrestling season. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Busy. But yeah, it was wonderful having you on here. It shed a lot of light, I think, probably for a lot of people on, like I said, the other side of the coin. And it's exciting to hear the growth that is currently going on, and hopefully it gets pushed to where you guys want it to be.
Agreed.
Me too.
So if you want to find all those links, look in the show notes. It'll be all over the social medias. If you want to support the Apex podcast, you can go to www.patreon.com/The Apex Podcast. Click on the big orange Become a Donor button. And that is, we have sections $1, $3, all the way up to $50. We're rolling out, RJ is personally working on a bunch of content that we're going to roll out through the Patreon.
Oh, yeah. Keep your guys' eyes out. As a little tied into a little bit extra content that I'll be putting out myself. And then it'll tie in with our Patreon and the here at the Apex and with the podcast. And
it'll be cool.
yeah,
RJ will have his
you
own
guys will be
voice.
able to interact with me a lot more.
RJ will have a lot of his own voice. And then the other beautiful thing too is if there's anybody out there, the only thing we ask with the show, you don't have to donate. We don't force anybody to pay in. The content will always be free. But if you learn something from this episode, or you think that somebody needs to hear the message that was present on this episode today, make sure that you share it with a friend, or you think that somebody needs to hear this message. If somebody needs that extra little boost or their permission to dream, like we talked about earlier on in the episode, make sure that you share it with them. Just because we want to try to get that message out to as many people as we can.
Absolutely. We want to reach as many people as we can.
Right. And with that, we will see you the next time we are seated across the table from each other. Vanessa, again, thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
And
It's a
we
pleasure.
will talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Keep chasing that apex.